Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, Team USA win an undefeated 3-0 in the first round in pool play at FIBA World Cup. Anthony Edwards dominated Jordan on early Wednesday morning in the U.S. A fantastic performance. We'll talk about the last two U.S. victories. We'll check in on Kat, how the Dominican Republic is doing. We'll peek ahead. What's next for Team USA later this week? It's all about the FIBA World Cup today here on Locked On Wolves. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. Hopefully you're having a fantastic week. A big thank you, first of all, for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find this show. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV, along with all the other Minnesota Locked On podcasts. And you can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right. We're talking FIBA World Cup today. Last show, Monday, I recorded it like right before, or I guess I recorded it on Sunday. So it would have been before the Team USA win over Greece. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, more recently, very early this morning on Wednesday, Team USA beat Jordan handily. It was really the first game that Team USA, including the exhibition season, really, where it felt like a complete start to finish, complete and utter dominance over a team that Team USA, frankly, should dominate, regardless of, the lack of actual NBA All-Stars on the team. Just simply put, the talent level was just so overwhelming. Obviously, Greece is good, but without Giannis, that wasn't a whole lot of a test either. But I want to talk a little bit about that game because it was a bit closer. Now, Greece is ranked 9th in the world. Of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo not playing. His brother did play, but no NBA players on the team besides Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Papa Nicolau, the former, what he played for the Rockets, I believe, was on the team. Like, Greece is still a good team, right? They've got more top to bottom talent than, say, Jordan, who the USA beat Wednesday. But it wasn't really all that close. Now, the final was 28. The game was closer than that, though. Team USA was only up 4 at the end of the first quarter. It kind of maintained, multiple possession lead, but didn't really push it to double digits until late in the second quarter of Monday's game. And Ant got off to a little bit of a slow start as well. And we've seen Steve Kerr now, especially these last couple of games, give some of the starters a big rest to start the second quarter. So Ant came out late in the first, didn't come back in until like 4+ minutes left in the second quarter against Greece on Monday. And really didn't score. I think he had 4 points at halftime. He only had one bucket. He started 1 of 6 from the field. And then at halftime, this was what was it? It was like a 12-point game, maybe. Let's see, 9. It was a 13-point game at halftime. And immediately in the third quarter, Team USA comes out, runs a set, Ant ends up open in the corner, knocks down a 3, and then from that point forward, Ant and the Team USA was off and running. Edwards scored 9 of his 13 points in the third and didn't score at all in the fourth quarter. Didn't need to. Team USA ends up winning by 18. Again, it was a little bit closer than that. It hovered around that 10 to 15 point lead for until late in the third quarter, and then Team USA really kind of pulled away. But it was really more of a balanced attack. Nobody scored more than 15 points. Team USA had 4 players score between 10 and 15. Austin Reeves led the team in scoring with 15, and he basically, I don't think in either of these last 2 games, he shared the court with Ant at all. We saw a little bit of that in the exhibition season, but clearly Steve Kerr's plan is by and large to have one of those 2 guys on the floor at all times. In fact, Austin Reeves, we'll talk about Wednesday's win over Jordan here in a minute. He played a little bit more than Ant because Ant didn't play at all in the fourth quarter of that game. So really, when Ant comes out, Reeves goes in, and Reeves plays the Ant role where he's effectively initiating offense. They're running some sets to get the ball in his hands, to get him moving towards the basket, dribble handoffs, etc., operating in pick and roll. And I mean, Reeves has been every bit as effective as Anthony Edwards in FIBA so far. In this particular game, Ant shot, again, against Greece, was 4 of 11 from the field. Again, he started 1 of 6, and then he finished 3 of 5, 3 of his last 5 shots. just 3 of 9 on 2-point shots. He was a little bit sloppy, forced a couple of mid-range jumpers, 1 of 2 outside the arc, got to the line 4 times, made all 4 of his free throws, 3 assists, only 2 boards in 20 minutes for Ant in that game against Greece. Again, it really felt like he was being really deferential throughout the game. Like he knew that they didn't really need him to win this game. And he didn't get into a groove early. So it was more just like, hey, I'm passing, I'm distributing, etc. And actually, I had this note for both games, so I'll highlight it here for Greece first. Anthony Edwards should have had more than 3 assists in this game. His passing, and I continue to say this. I said this if you listened or watched Locked On NBA on Monday with Jackson Gatlin, who's also the host of Locked On Rockets. I was on that show Sunday, so this was before the Greece game Monday morning, to talk about Ant so far in FIBA. And Jackson asked me what I thought about Ant and like what's been most impressive. I said the playmaking, the distribution, the decision-making with the ball in his hands. And I've said all offseason, that's what's been that was the biggest area of growth for Ant last year in the NBA with the Timberwolves, was the decision-making with the ball in his hands. It doesn't show up on the stat sheet necessarily. It doesn't even necessarily show through in all the advanced metrics either. That was the one clear area. There were some shot selection issues, some efficiency issues, some consistency on both ends of the floor. But the decision-making with the ball in the hands, the ability to distribute on time, on target, that has continued to improve. And it's been even more impressive to me in FIBA World Cup. And I mean, you could argue, and I said this to Jackson too, that like Cat is still better than the second best player in Team USA. I mean, we could argue about Brandon Ingram and Jalen Brunson, I guess, maybe Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, it's close, right? But it's not like there's another player that's at Ant's level on Team USA. There just isn't. But it's a whole team of guys, right? Like there's no apologies to Jordan McLaughlin and the Wolves bench. There's no Jordan McLaughlin. There's no Nick Alexander Walker's a bad example because he's played really well for Canada. These are all starting caliber NBA players, right? So they all want the ball in their hands, but there isn't like a 1B to Ant's 1A in this situation. So on some level, it may be more difficult to pick your spots. But on the other hand, everybody's a dynamic player on this roster in their own way. And so Ant to distribute the ball like he has, again, only 3 assists Monday against Greece, but it easily could have been 5 or 6. There were some missed open threes. There was a missed bunny at the rim by, I forget who it was. But Ant's passing was really, really impressive on Monday against Greece. And that stood out the most to me. But this was a relatively easy win. Again, Reeves led with scoring, 15 points, 4-7 shooting. He also had 6 assists off the bench, Austin Reeves did. And he was second on the team with 5 rebounds. Josh Hart in 20 minutes on Monday and got a lot of clock because of the score. 6 points, 11 rebounds, led the team in rebounding. Bobby Portis had 10 points, 4 rebounds. Ant had those 13. We continue to see quiet Brandon Ingram, only 5 points, 2 made shots from the field for Ingram on Monday as well, which has been kind of an interesting storyline to follow. Banchero, after being huge on Saturday, only had 8 points, but he didn't play as much as Bobby Portis. So actually, no, they played about the same minutes-wise, but Portis just seemed a little bit more involved when he was on the floor. Anyway, relatively easy win over Greece on Monday. Wednesday, no relatively about it, a super easy win. We'll talk a little bit about just how dominant Ant was, led the game in scoring. So we'll talk about that game here next. We'll also take a peek at Cat, what he's up to, and when does USA play next? Who does Team USA play next? We'll talk about all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's an amazing deal, by the way. If you're an NFL fan at all, if you're a Minnesota NFL fan, the Vikings look like they'll be decent again this year. I don't know, they'll win 13 games again, but it should be an interesting division, right? Like you could make a case for all, well, maybe not the Bears, but the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings for all being legit division winner contenders or contenders to win the division. Now's the season to do this. Again, just bet $5 to get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You also get your $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. A big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, every day is Friday. We'll talk. The time hasn't been released yet. I'm tipping. We'll talk about Team USA's schedule. They haven't released the time as of this recording when they'll play, but surely it will be before. Well, I shouldn't say surely. It likely will be after I record Friday's podcast, but we will see. If we don't talk FIBA, we'll briefly preview the matchup for the U.S. on Friday's show, but we will talk about some of these win total projections and Eastern Conference projections that are coming out of ESPN, Bleacher Report, etc. I've been putting that off because of all the FIBA stuff, but we'll talk about that on Friday and also a little bit more FIBA. So that's upcoming on Friday. And then, of course, we'll be back on Monday. As always, we'll have a whole weekend of FIBA basketball to talk about on Monday. All right. So Team USA played Jordan very early in the morning. It was like 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday. And I watched it right before recording the show. It was exactly what you would expect, and frankly refreshing to see Team USA actually completely and thoroughly dominate someone. And they didn't do that really in exhibit. There were some easy wins in there, but this is I think what a lot of people expect when Team USA plays lesser national teams. I mean, just to put that very frankly. Now, Team USA should have done this to Jordan. But Jordan's still 33rd in the world, right? Like we talked about this before the tournament. Team USA's group or pool, as I keep calling it, the Group C, has the most compacted rankings, if you will. So the worst team in the pool, in the group, was Jordan at World 33. Every other group, A through H, their worst team or the lowest seeded team had a higher world ranking than Jordan. So Jordan was still 33rd, like a team that the U.S. should dominate, but by far not even close, I should say, to the worst team in the entire tournament. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, of course, briefly a Timberwolf in training camp a couple of years ago, and actually I wanted him on the team. I still don't really know why he's not in the NBA as a bench guy, role guy, whatever. Anyway, he was good for them. He was really good the previous time out in their loss before the U.S. game. But Hollis-Jefferson was really the only hope that the Jordan national team had. He had 20 points in this game. The next highest scorer on Jordan's team had 10 points. So Hollis-Jefferson had to be high usage. He was relatively effective, and he was the only hope that Jordan had. The U.S. jumped out to a 15-2 lead. Ant started to go off. It suddenly was 20-4. The end of the first quarter, it was 31-12. Ant did a ton of damage early. He was really aggressive getting into the paint. Yes, he did knock down 3 threes on 5 attempts in this game, but he was 5 of 11 from 2-point range, and only I think 3 of them were non-paint twos, and I believe he made 2 of those 3. There were a couple of kind of forced heat checks in there. He still was 8 of 16, right? In 19 minutes of play. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Ant didn't, because the Team USA was up by so much. Again, it was 31-12 after the first quarter, and it was 62-33 at halftime. So Ant played most of the third quarter, didn't play at all in the fourth, but he had 22 for the game. I think he had 16 at halftime or 15 at halftime was the game leading scorer, and got hot again in the third quarter. Had a couple of nice open floor dunks in transition. Well, there was one that was a lay-in. There was a dunk after a behind the back pass off a steal from Jalen Brunson. That was a windmill dunk from Ant that you've no doubt seen the highlight on already. But the first half, when the game was at least, relatively in question, Ant was really aggressive getting to the rim. He had a really nice Ant one when he finished through the defense, took the contact and got to the line. By the way, made all his free throws against Greece on Monday and against Jordan. 7 of 7 total at the line between those two games, which is positive to see after he missed a couple on Saturday, and we saw those free throw issues late in the regular season last year with the Wolves. So good to see Ant making those free throws in international competition for the most part. But the most impressive thing for me was getting to the glass, the aggressiveness there. Also, going back to the playmaking conversation, 4 assists, 0 turnovers for Anthony Edwards in this game. So listen to this line: 22 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, no turnovers for Anthony Edwards. Was a second on the team, tied for second on the team with a plus 30, and was just phenomenal. 8 of 16 overall shooting, 3 of 5 outside the arc, 3 of 3 at the line, and effective going to the rim. If you pull out those mid-range shots, again, I think he was 2 of 3 or maybe 2 of 4 from mid-range. Take those out, and the efficiency looks even better. I get that that's part of his game, but that's my, kind of other concern from last year. Shot selection wise, he shot a lot more long twos last season. And I know it's because he knows he can now. He can get that shot off anytime he wants, and he's a pretty good mid-range shooter, but he's not Kevin Durant. He's not Devin Booker. He's not a mid-range ace, right? So, and at his age, athleticism, size, just get all the way to the bucket, right? Now, I don't want him to hit the floor 14 times a game in FIBA, and maybe that was part of the calculus here. I don't know, because he did hit the floor a lot early in the game, but he was dynamic getting to the basket. He was drawing fouls. He was impressive getting downhill. And he should be, right, against the Jordan national team. But in 19 minutes, 22 points on 16 shots, 4 assists, no turnovers. This was another game, just like Monday against Greece. It easily could have had 8 assists in this game. In fact, I was tracking it. There were at least 4 missed buckets that should have, like a couple of wide open threes, at least one in the lane. There was one that I think it was Brunson maybe, or Bridges, got fouled and got to the line off of an Ant dish, but missed the layup. It rolled out, and instead of an and one, it was just free throws. So obviously no assist for Ant. There were a couple of those mixed in there. Now you could say that about almost every game, but it really feels prominent to me because Anthony Edwards, like Monday against Greece, he was really unselfish, like super unselfish. He knew that they didn't need him to win that game. In this game, he got hot early and kind of was like, all right, I'm going to force some stuff. But it just felt like he had the ball in his hands so much that he was still able to chalk up 4 assists to no turnovers. He had a couple of really nice passes in transition. There were some nice headman passes to ignite the break. Just impeccable decision-making. In fact, I don't even know that there was a bad pass that Anthony Edwards made in this game. Like, I thought every read he made was completely correct. And that is so important and such a big step in the right direction. And again, I said this in the first segment, it's a continuation of what we saw last year from Anthony Edwards on the Wolves. Is he's improving in that area of his game so much. And it's so great to see. Other players for the U.S., he had 22. Nobody else had more than 13. Portis had 13. Jaren Jackson had 12. Jackson was very good in this game. He only had 2 blocks, but he affected a number of shots. Walker Kessler, by the way, had 3 blocks in 12 minutes. Both of them, again, a much bigger team. We're seeing this a lot. The Team USA is going to be, even though they like to play small, and it's not like Portis, Banchero, the primary bigs are gigantic guys compared to NBA centers. In international play, I mean, that'll do. You can play small, right? But Kessler played well when he was in the game. Jaren Jackson was very, very good. 4 of 7 shooting, 4 of 5 on twos. He attempted 2 threes and missed them both. Got to the line 7 times. I thought he was probably the next best player. Portis and Jackson together probably were. Jalen Brunson scored 4 quick points, I think the first 4 of the game, and then was relatively quiet the rest of the way. He had 10. Another pretty quiet game for Banchero, 8 and 4. Austin Reeves, again, kind of filled the Ant role off the bench, only had 8 points in this game, but and actually had 4 turnovers to just 1 assist. So not Austin Reeves' best game. He did have 1 steal where he just kind of punked the guy on Jordan. I think it was the Jordan game. I'm getting these 2 games mixed up, Jordan and Greece. I think it was the Jordan game where he just stole a behind the back dribble, went behind the back himself to get the ball up the court. And then Ant ended up getting an assist, I think, on that play where in the paint, he dumped it off to Portis. So it was, there was that one nice sequence that was initiated by Austin Reeves, but in general, probably his worst game in international play so far. The Brandon Ingram check, a little more active, 7 points on 7 shots, but still probably not, certainly not the performance he's been expecting based on his quotes to the media, but in general, probably not what Team USA expected from Ingram either. All right, next, let's talk about what's up next for Team USA. We'll also check in on Kat and the Dominican Republic. We'll do that here next. All right, Team USA plays next on Friday. So they get Thursday off, and then round 2 is officially what it's called, will take place Friday. I'm kind of filling this in based on the schedule on the FIBA World Cup site because it's not all the way filled in yet. But according to the schedule, Team C1, so the team that finishes first in Group C, it's Team US, will play on Friday against Montenegro. There is no time listed yet. It looks like the 5th game of the day. So probably like still early-ish morning, 7, 8 o'clock. I'm completely guessing on the time, but it'll be Friday. against Montenegro. Checking in on Montenegro, we'll go a little bit more in depth on Friday, but real quickly, they're 2-1. They beat a couple of I don't know, they beat a couple of teams with no NBA talent, I guess is maybe the best way to say that. They beat Japan. They beat, nope, sorry. I skipped a line. They beat Egypt and they beat Mexico, both very easily. I think they were both 20-point wins. Neither team, neither Mexico nor Egypt, has any NBA players on their team, at least not current NBA players. They lost to Lithuania, though, by 20. Montenegro is 18th in the world. Lithuania was 8th in the world coming into the tournament. And Montenegro lost to Lithuania by 20. Lithuania's got Jonas Valanciunas on the team, and he is the only NBA caliber talent on that team. Montenegro has Nikola Vucevic, and he's their only NBA talent. And in that game, he had 19 points, 11 of 11 at the line in this loss to Lithuania, but he was just 4 of 13 from the field. Valanciunas, for his part, had 11 points, 8 rebounds in that game, but he was like third on the team in scoring when Lithuania beat Montenegro by 20. So Montenegro was second in their group. Team USA will play them Friday. It's a winnable game. We'll break it down a little bit more on Friday's show. I say winnable game. These all are winnable games for Team USA. It's a game they should win, but at least in terms of world ranking, I mean, I guess Greece was 9th, but without Giannis, like, is Greece really 9th? Montenegro is 18th, so it should be the stiffest test for Team USA to this point. I would say probably in the same neighborhood as Greece without Giannis would be Montenegro in terms of overall talent and effectiveness. So not difficult. Man, it's really hard to kind of parse this when we're talking about Team USA should be here and they're the favorite in all these games, right? A more difficult game than the Jordan game, probably more like the Greece game Monday. That'll be Friday. We'll talk about it on Friday's show as well. Let's talk about the Dominican Republic. 3-0. The Dominican Republic is in the tournament so far. Cat was phenomenal in the first 2 games. We talked about that on Monday's show. They beat Italy already. That was the big test. They had already beaten the Philippines in a close game when Jordan Clarkson went off for the Philippines. They just had to beat Angola. And Angola 41st in the world. So again, context, Jordan is 33rd, Angola is 41st. They're supposed to be worse than Jordan was. The U.S. just beat Jordan by 50 or whatever it was. And Cat got into foul trouble. Classic Cat, unfortunately. Super good in the first 2 games. Averaged, 25 and 11, 25 and 10, something like that in the first 2 games. Then he gets 3 fouls in the first 4 minutes of the game against Angola. Had only 8 points and 2 rebounds in 15 minutes of that game. But the Dominican Republic still wins. They won 75-67. They won by 8 and had to rely on non-Cat players. Lester Quinones, of course, the only other NBA player on that roster. He was relatively quiet off the bench, 7 points. Andres Feliz had 17. Victor Liz had 13 points. And they combined for 14 rebounds. So, I mean, Cat, like, just a quiet game. He did what he does too often with the Wolves, got into foul trouble early and wasn't able to be effective. Thankfully, they held on against what should have been a far inferior opponent in Angola. So the Dominican Republic advances. And actually, let's see if I could real quick pull up when they play next. I believe that they play tomorrow on Thursday, but I'm going to make sure that that's true here. Well, no, I think they don't play again until Friday. Let's see here. Yeah, they play Friday, actually tipping around the same time, maybe slightly before the U.S., and they'll be against B2, which I'm jumping around here to try and see if I can figure out who the Dominican will play. They'll play against South Sudan on Friday, again, slightly before Team USA plays. South Sudan beat China. They lost to Serbia by quite a bit, so that's another winnable game for the Dominican. And, South Sudan is ranked. They were actually only 62nd in the world coming into this. They're a bit of a surprise that they're still in it. But that's who, if I'm reading this correctly, the Dominican will play Friday. So hopefully Cat has a much better performance. Team USA will play Montenegro on Friday as we move forward in the World Cup. And again, as the way that this works, if you're not familiar, the remaining 16 teams, so basically the top 2 from every group, are sorted into 4 groups of 4. So U.S. is back in a group, or one of the 2, whoever's second in their group. I'm blanking on who it is now. They're in a group with 3 other teams now. They're reseeded, and then the top 2 teams from each group. So if the U.S. wins all 3 of their next games, obviously they qualify for the last phase. If they split, there's a chance that they wouldn't advance. Of course, if the U.S. loses a game, it's kind of a disaster either way. So if they keep doing what they're doing, obviously the U.S. will be in the final phase, and then and that's the top 8. So quarterfinals, and then if for instance, if the Dominican loses, they keep playing in the classification rounds to determine their overall world ranking. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This is where it starts to get really, really fun and good for Kat. Good for, by the way, Team Canada and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. A much tougher time for France, as we talked about on Monday. But in general, impressive performances for Alexander Walker, for Kat, for Anthony Edwards, especially. Ant has been arguably the best player in the tournament so far, all the way around. So a lot of fun here moving into the weekend. We'll, of course, cover on Friday what the action is Friday. And then we'll take a peek ahead at the rest of the schedule throughout the weekend. That will all be set at that point in time. So tune back in on Friday for all that. And again, we'll also on Friday talk about win total projections, Western Conference rankings, all that good stuff that's over at ESPN and Bleacher Report right now. So all that's upcoming here on Friday's show. A big thank you for watching. A big thank you for listening once again. And a big thank you for making us your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. You can download that at on either Roku or Amazon Fire TV. You can follow on Twitter or X at Beecken and at Locked On T-Wolves. Don't forget the T. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.